When a man truly loves and adores a woman, one of the most profound and telling signs is his willingness, no, his voluntary compulsion to bear responsibility for her well-being. This is not a superficial gesture. It is not a performative act to secure approval or attention. It is a deep-rooted instinct, grounded in something ancient, something archetypal. To take responsibility is fundamentally to recognize the existence of something fragile, something of value, and to make a decision, to say, I will act in such a way that this thing does not descend into chaos. In this case, the thing is the relational space, the emotional safety, and the psychological health of the woman he cherishes. This isn't about domination. It's not about control. It is about stewardship, about standing guard at the gates of meaning, ensuring that what matters is not corrupted by neglect. Responsibility in the context of love emerges from the understanding that to love someone is to be attentive to the complexity of their needs and to willingly shoulder the burden of being attuned to that complexity. A man who loves a woman will not see her struggles or vulnerabilities as inconveniences to be avoided or dismissed. Rather, he regards them as part of the territory he is duty-bound to explore and protect. He doesn't recoil from her suffering, he leans into it. Not to wallow in codependency, but to serve as a stabilizing presence, a point of orientation when the world threatens to fracture. This kind of man does not outsource his responsibility to institutions, ideologies, or even circumstances. He does not say, well, that's her problem, or she'll figure it out. He does not flee when her complexity challenges his own comfort. He says, I am here and I will remain. It is the presence of the voluntary in this statement that is most crucial. Because forced responsibility breeds resentment, but chosen responsibility, that is love, that is devotion, that is what transforms mere affection into a moral posture. It is not enough for a man to merely feel love. Feelings are mercurial and they are often reactive, untrustworthy, and fleeting. What distinguishes real love from the fleeting passion of infatuation is this: the decision to take responsibility. He accepts the burden of attentiveness. He remembers what matters to her. He notices her moods, her silences, the subtle shifts in her expressions and patterns. Not because he is a mind reader, and not because he is perfect, but because he cares enough to pay attention. Attention is, after all, the purest form of generosity. To bear responsibility for someone is also to organize your behavior around the recognition that their life is partly in your hands. If you neglect them, it matters. If you betray them, it tears a hole, not only in their soul, but in yours. A man who loves understands this, even if not in explicit terms. He carries this awareness not as a burden, but as a privilege. To matter to someone, to be entrusted with a part of their emotional world, this is not a small thing. It is sacred, it is frightening, but it is also the highest form of affirmation a person can receive. To be seen as someone capable of carrying the weight of another's inner life. In psychological terms, responsibility is the antidote to chaos. And chaos is what awaits every relationship not tethered to something solid. Love that does not manifest as responsibility is vulnerable to disintegration, particularly when stressors arise. A man who is willing to bear responsibility inoculates the relationship against entropy. He is not perfect. He will fail. He will fall short, but he will return. That returning again and again is what sets him apart. He does not flee when things become difficult. He understands that difficulty is the proving ground of character. And so he embraces difficulty as part of the cost of genuine love. There is something deeply masculine about this orientation, not in the stereotypical or reductive sense, but in the archetypal sense. The masculine in its highest form is not the domineering tyrant, nor the detached wanderer. It is the one who stands willingly between chaos and order, between vulnerability and threat. It is the one who says, I will do what is necessary to ensure that the people I love are safe, seen, and cared for. This doesn't mean infantilizing the woman or turning her into a dependent. Far from it. It means regarding her autonomy as something so valuable that it must be protected, not ignored. Responsibility here is not a cage, it's a foundation. In this frame, we see that love is not merely an emotional state. It is an orientation toward reality. It is a call to elevate oneself, to transcend the mere satisfaction of desire and aim at something greater, something enduring. A man who loves deeply does not simply want to possess a woman. He wants to honor her. And honor in this context requires sacrifice. Not grand theatrical sacrifice, but the daily kind, the choice to listen instead of distract, to protect rather than retreat, to engage rather than avoid. These are not glamorous acts, but they are the acts that make love sustainable. And so we arrive at the difficult truth that real love is not easy, and that the man who bears responsibility for the woman he loves is undertaking a moral task of tremendous magnitude. But this is not a burden to be pitied, it is a pathway to meaning. Because meaning is not found in the pursuit of personal pleasure, but in the willingness to carry the load that life and love inevitably place upon us. When a man says with his actions, "You matter enough to me that I will arrange my life in such a way that your well-being is part of my aim," he is stepping into a mode of being that is fundamentally redemptive. He becomes someone who is capable of withstanding the storm not just for himself, but for another. And in doing so, he becomes something more than himself. When a man truly loves and adores a woman, one of the clearest and most telling indicators of that love is his integration of her into his vision of the future. This is not merely about verbal declarations or romantic gestures. It is a structural feature of how he imagines the unfolding of his life. It means that she is no longer just a presence in his current emotional landscape. She is part of his projected trajectory. She becomes embedded in his plans, in his long-term goals, in the stories he tells himself about who he is becoming and what he is building. A man's future vision is, in many ways, a map of meaning. And to include a woman in that map is to declare, consciously or not, that her presence contributes to the meaningfulness of his existence. This integration is not superficial. It is not the product of impulse or the intoxication of temporary infatuation. It is deliberate. It shows up in the small, often mundane decisions he makes on a daily basis. He does not simply ask, "What do I want to do with my life?" He begins to ask, "What do we want to build together?" And this shift from I to we is not rhetorical. It is foundational. It alters the very structure of his decision-making. He no longer sees himself as a lone actor pursuing isolated goals, but as someone moving in concert with another human being whose values, dreams, and needs must be considered alongside his own. This kind of inclusion is not manipulative or possessive. It is not about dragging a woman into a pre-existing script and forcing her to play a role. On the contrary, it involves negotiation, openness, and a genuine interest in her input. A man who loves in this way seeks to co-author the narrative. He is willing to revise his plans in light of her presence, not because he is weak, but because he recognizes the strength it takes to allow one's future to be reshaped by love. That reshaping is a risk, but it is a risk he is willing to take, precisely because she matters. To be included in someone's future is fundamentally to be granted ontological weight in their internal world. It means that your existence is not transient in their mind. It means you are not just a temporary solution to loneliness or an object of passing desire. You are seen as a partner, a co-journeyer, someone worthy of space in the narrative arc of a life. This is no small thing. It speaks to the seriousness with which he regards the relationship. It speaks to his willingness to delay gratification, to commit to something that extends beyond the immediate moment. And that willingness is, psychologically and morally, one of the clearest signs of mature love. In practical terms, the integration of a woman into a man's future often reveals itself in the kinds of conversations he initiates. He talks about shared goals. He asks about timelines, about where she wants to live, whether she wants children, what kind of life she envisions for herself. These are not interrogations, they are invitations. Invitations into a shared world. He doesn't merely think of his career trajectory in isolation. He considers how it might affect her. He thinks about where they might live, what kind of community they might become a part of, how their values might shape their home. He begins to think structurally, relationally, contextually. And in doing so, he aligns his vision of success with the stability and flourishing of the relationship. This alignment is crucial because love that does not include a future orientation is in many ways structurally incomplete. It lacks the architecture to sustain itself through difficulty. A man who includes a woman in his long-term vision is not simply enjoying the pleasures of the present, he is actively laying the groundwork for enduring connection. He is making investments, emotional, spiritual, logistical, that signify an orientation toward permanence. And permanence, in a world increasingly allergic to commitment, is a radical act. It is a refusal to treat others as disposable. It is a declaration that some things, some people, are worth building for. What makes this even more significant is that the future is inherently uncertain. To plan for a future that includes another person is to embrace that uncertainty with courage. It is to acknowledge that while we cannot predict what will happen, we can still choose who we want by our side. That choice is a profound form of respect. It is a recognition of the other's value, not just in the now, but in all the possible futures to come. It is a form of psychological anchoring. The woman becomes not just someone he loves, but someone he looks toward in moments of doubt, someone he orients himself around as he navigates the complexity of life. This kind of orientation requires vulnerability. To integrate another into one's future is to relinquish the illusion of complete autonomy. It is to accept that your life is no longer entirely your own. And that is both terrifying and beautiful. It is terrifying because it opens the door to loss, to betrayal, to the pain of dashed hopes. But it is beautiful because it also opens the door to meaning, to connection, to the possibility of a life that is shared and therefore deepened. A man who integrates a woman into his vision is not avoiding risk. He is choosing a better risk. He is betting on something that might make the struggle of existence more bearable, more purposeful. He begins to speak in terms of we, not out of habit or social expectation, but because he genuinely sees the relationship as central to his life's structure. He begins to delay gratification, to make sacrifices that benefit the couple rather than just the self. He imagines a home, a rhythm of daily life, a future full of milestones, not as solitary achievements, but as shared accomplishments. This imaginative inclusion is not just symbolic. It shapes real-world behavior. It affects how he spends his time, how he manages his resources, how he evaluates opportunities. Love becomes an active principle in his planning, not an afterthought or an indulgence. When a man speaks of 5 years, 10 years down the line and consistently places her there, not as a passive figure, but as a participant, this is not accidental. It is not the kind of thing one does unconsciously. It is a signal that she has become part of the story he tells himself about what matters. She is not a chapter. She is part of the narrative spine. He does not merely hope she will be around. He makes decisions that increase the probability that she will be. He does not count on fate. He acts intentionally. And in this intentionality, love takes on a moral dimension. It becomes not just something he feels, but something he is committed to expressing through action, structure, and vision.